Saudi Arabia has made a pledge to save boxing.
The vision of 2030 in our country, to do and deliver to the market the best fight with good price and make the fight that people want to see it.
But what they really mean is that they want to own boxing for themselves, and that could be terrible news for the sport. The Saudis want to destroy the history of the IBF, WBO, and all of boxing's governing bodies and create their own new league, where the athletes have no say on who or when they fight. In some people's eyes, Saudi Arabia is ruining the legitimacy of every sport they touch, but others claim they're the saviors. Now though, boxing is in their crosshairs. So why do Saudi Arabia want to take over boxing? And what does it mean for the sport? They want to centralize boxing under one organization, bypassing all the existing governing bodies, promoters, and politics that currently hold back the sport.
There is not a lot of fighters as a charismatic and character now. There is a lot of problem of the promoter. They doesn't want to do the strongest fight because it costs a lot. Some fighter doesn't want to do the strongest fight. And there is 4 company, 4 built.
So many problems.
And doing this would address one of the biggest criticisms boxing has always faced: the fact the best don't always fight the best. Instead, there's too much back and forth about who's getting what percentage of the money, what size the ring is, who the referee is, who walks out last, where the fight takes place, and so much more. And usually when the superfight fans have been clamoring for gets made, both fighters are way past their prime. The undercard is terrible, the production value is poor, and it just feels like a last-minute money grab before the boxers retire.
Every fucking event that they put on, it's a going out of business sale. Let's grab as much money as we can from everybody. We don't care if the event is good. We don't care if the people at home enjoy what they saw. They don't care if the people who came and bought tickets liked it.
Right.
We just want to grab as much money as we can. They never reinvested in the sport. Tell me a sport or any business ever in the history of the world that has probably made trillions of dollars in revenue. And at the end of the day, there's nothing there.
Right.
That's boxing.
But the Saudis want to eradicate this completely. They want to turn boxing into something similar to the UFC, where one single organization manages, promotes, and puts on the fights.
To catch the youngest generation now, you need to have good poster, good music, good show. You understand?
Good trailers.
DJ, you understand me? Good promotion. Use a lot of cameras, use a lot of things. Similar to what UFC now do. They do it right because they are company, and they are the only company.
With boxing though, the promoters, fighters, broadcast networks, and everyone involved wants their piece of the pie. The Saudis have so much money that they'll just pay everyone what they want to make the fight happen. In recent months alone, they've put on Fury versus Francis, Francis versus Joshua, and Fury versus Usyk, to name just a few. Fights that probably would have taken months, if not years, to make happen. That's if they'd even happen at all.
The body of work Turki Alalshikh has put up so far, it's been good. I mean, we've gotten fights in the heavyweight division. It's been moving, things have been happening. I don't think without Turki Alalshikh, some of these fights would not have happened. It wouldn't be as fun. So he's done it in the right direction. Of course, it would have to be maneuvered correctly, guided correctly, but the funds are there to do something cool, and he's done something cool thus far. But again, I stress, it has to be guided correctly if you do this, because you start misguiding it and you potentially ruin things too.
But now, they're looking to make the next step. Talks between multiple boxing promoters, including Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, Golden Boy Promotions, about a potential $5 billion deal to create a new boxing league, are underway. If the deal is signed, over 200 of the world's top boxers will come together under one league. It would feature 12 weight classes, around 15 to 20 boxers, in each division with a single ranking system, essentially identical to the UFC's system. As a result, the confusion around there being hundreds of world champions forced mandatory challengers, and the infighting between the IBF, WBO, WBA, and WBC would be a thing of the past.
Was exactly what we have been banging the drum for on this show for an awful long time, and that's pure and simply bin the belts. To get rid of the 4 governing bodies in this sport, which are leeches on the sport, that do nothing but take money from the table of the fighters.
It would no doubt be the biggest shakeup in boxing history. And these groundbreaking changes are being led by one man, Turki Alalshikh. In Saudi Arabia, Turki Alalshikh is an advisor at the royal court and chairman of the General Entertain Authority. You may have seen his DAZN interview, him hanging out with Dana White, or in the ring at numerous boxing events in Riyadh.
He's one of the best business guy and smart guy ever I see in the martial arts business, and I am very happy to work with him. We have a lot of surprise in the future.
His job is essentially to make Saudi the new Las Vegas and have it become the sporting and entertainment capital of the world. And Alalshikh's main avenue of doing so has been through the wildly extravagant Riyadh season that has run from October to March each year, dating back to 2019. It's a huge series of events that brings the most high-profile music and sports all to Saudi Arabia to perform their craft. Whether it's Post Malone, a tennis tournament feature, Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz, a soccer match between Cristiano Ronaldo's and Lionel Messi's teams, a WWE event, or numerous boxing events, Saudi Arabia are being incredibly ambitious. But while Alalshikh's role is to turn Saudi Arabia into a tourism hotspot, he actually has a passion for boxing.
I am fan in boxing, and the people in our country like the boxing. The boxing was the sport number 1 in the world in the 70 and the 80. Now in our studies is the 14. The boxing suffered a lot of problem in the last, especially 20 years. One of the major company like UFC and another MMA sport, they grow on up and taking from the market share of boxing. Who's handling boxing in the last 20-30 years? People with, in our opinion, old school, doing the business as is the 70 and the 60.
Like most fans, he was fed up with seeing things like Usyk versus Fury not happening, and Mayweather versus Pacquiao going down years after it should. And that's where Alalshikh saw an opportunity to step in and try to essentially own boxing.
You got one fighter on one side of the street, top fighter, another guy with another promoter, the other side street. They don't want to come together unless the money is so crazy, because they don't want to lose control. They want to make all the money. Now the money's so crazy, they're coming together. And it shows you those fights could be made. They could be made here, but they don't want to part with that money. They don't want to get to them. So it took Turki Alalshikh to come in and say, okay, I'm going to throw so much freaking money at you that everybody will love everyone. Everybody will be in the same room. Everybody will come across the street. And it'll become my street.
Unlike other sports where one brand or league dominates the scene like NFL in American football or the UFC in MMA, boxing is this decentralized, convoluted mess. There's numerous different promoters, various organizations with their own rules, and that's why all these strange politics take place. So boxing is ripe for someone with a lot of cash to step in and make some drastic changes. But that hasn't stopped Saudi Arabia from trying to infiltrate into other sports. And while it's perhaps worked out better in other instances, at times it's been incredibly controversial. One of Saudi's biggest and most contentious sporting investments was into golf. They created the Alive Golf Tournament, luring a huge number of the top-ranking golfers away from the historic PGA Tour, with the increased prize money and salaries they were offering. While many golfers benefited financially, it completely destroyed the legitimacy of golf, seeing the world's best players spread out in different tournaments.
You know, it's a shame that it's come to this point.
Should they be allowed to play Ryder Cup?
No, if I had my way, no.
What's the damage already done, do you feel, to the sport of golf?
I think it's just ripped it apart at this point.
In soccer, Saudi have disrupted the major European leagues by signing a whole host of top players to their Saudi Pro League with unprecedented salaries.
I just think with the money involved, that's why people are going there, it's obvious, that I think it'd be a real sad day for football if players in their prime were not playing in the biggest league.
Yet despite this, the attendance and viewership is abysmal in comparison to the European countries. They've built long-term partnerships with the UFC and the WWE to host numerous events. They're even getting a foothold in the Formula One circuit. And while it usually means the athletes are getting paid more, the history and legacy of their sport usually suffers. On the face of it, the Saudis appear as though their sole aim is to make boxing great, but they have an ulterior motive, one that is entirely selfish.
حجم إنتاجنا تقريبا ازداد بشكل طفيف جدا، لكن حجم النمو السكاني ازداد بشكل ضخم للغاية، من مليون مليونين 3 مليون نسمة إلى تقريبا 20 مليون سعودي. فأصبح النفط يعني يا دوب يغطي الاحتياجات وطريقة الحياة اللي تعودنا عليها من الستينيات والسبعينيات والثمانينيات وطالع.
The aim is for the nation to diversify away from its dependence on oil, which currently accounts for over 40% of Saudi Arabia's GDP. So the country is executing on a program from the Crown Prince, known as Saudi Vision 2030. One of their big objectives to do so is by boosting national tourism through the entertainment and sports sector.
We are in Saudi Arabia very happy to welcome everyone around the world to know our country and our culture, and to visit and see it and understand us. We have a beautiful place and a lot of big entertainment night and project. I think the people will be excited to see it.
And with the Riyadh season, no one can question their ambition. But they've also been accused of using sports as a way of restoring their controversial reputation to the world by practicing what is called sports washing.
I think that that the Saudi investment fund is sports washing their human rights record, and they've done it in golf and they've done it in boxing for a while.
That same technique is used by the likes of corrupt Dagestani leaders being friendly with UFC fighters, Qatar hosting the 2022 Football World Cup despite their human rights issues. And even Germany, in the midst of their Nazi regime, hosted the Olympics in 1936 to appear strong to the world. Saudi Arabia claimed that their primary aim is to build new forms of national income, and any reputation boost comes as a nice knock-on effect.
Well, if sport washing gonna increase my GDP by 1%, and then I will continue doing sport washing.
You're okay with that term?
I don't care. I have 1% growth of GDP from sport, and I'm aiming for another 1.5%. Call it whatever you want. We're going to get that 1.5%.
But Saudi Arabia is no doubt trying to cover up some of its human rights issues and posture to the world that they're an incredible place to visit. After all, Saudi Arabia has the second highest number of executions in the world. Women are being discriminated against, and in 2018, the current crown prince ordered the assassination of a journalist speaking against the Saudi regime.
Sports washing is also a legitimate issue, but no amount of money can wash away the stain of the brutal Khashoggi assassination and other human rights abuses. But it would be grossly unfair to expect the PGA Tour to bear the full burden of holding Saudi Arabia accountable.
In short, Saudi Arabia remains a country shrouded in controversy, but money talks. Because regardless of the country's human rights issues, celebrities, sports stars, musicians gladly take their millions to go to Saudi and partake in their sport washing program. And everyone is speaking about it positively because they want a piece of that cash for themselves. And boxing is next. So what does it mean if Saudi Arabia gets the monopoly on boxing they so desperately want? The biggest change is that boxing will go from its current scattered state to a single entity. For fans, it's great news in many ways. Those marquee fights we all want to see will almost certainly happen. No more waiting years for fights to materialize. Instead, the Saudis will throw ungodly amounts of money at it and make sure both parties are well looked after financially. Case in point, Tyson Fury reportedly made over $100 million for his fight with Usyk, which is around 3 times more than he earned for his last bout without the Saudi backing. But the fact that the majority of landmark events will potentially end up in Riyadh means the regular boxing fan will probably get priced out of going to events live. Some of the recent Saudi boxing events have been heavily criticized for paying superstar celebrities like Cristiano Ronaldo and Conor McGregor to sit front row, then filling the arena with extremely wealthy and important Saudi residents instead of actual boxing fans.
What have we got now? Who's winning? Who's winning this one?
It means aside from the money the Saudis will put towards things like an incredible pyrotechnics show, probably a rapper to perform before the fight, the actual atmosphere itself will be lackluster.
In Saudi Arabia, you don't get Froch-Kessler rematch at the O2. You don't get Froch-Groves rematch at Wembley Stadium for 80,000 fans. You just don't get it because you don't get the British fans. They're animated, passionate British fans that don't travel to Saudi. Now listen, I'm not criticising it for the sake of criticising it. I'm pointing out an observation that everybody agrees with.
And should all the big fights take place in Saudi Arabia, the interest in local amateur and low-level professionals will decline massively. Getting an undercard spot on a big fight night in your home country is a tried and tested method of building your brand as a boxer. But if all those world-class headliners are exclusively abroad in Saudi, making that jump to the big time becomes even more difficult. And let's be real, Saudi Arabia only wants to put on the grandest shows possible. It's highly unlikely they'll want to invest in the unknown up-and-comers and help develop the sport. And another fear amongst fans is that should one major promoter or a handful of elite fighters not want to play ball with the Saudis for whatever reason, then the sport could be thrown into chaos. It could lead to a world similar to what we see in MMA, where UFC fighters can't compete against their PFL or Bellator counterparts, and we never know who truly is number one. Of course, 9 times out of 10, it's usually the UFC champion that's the best in the world, but that's besides the point. At least in the current state of boxing, anyone can fight anyone, regardless of who they're signed with. In the short term, Saudi owning boxing may be great, at least for the elite of the elite. But at some point when either Saudi Arabia loses interest in boxing, achieves their sports washing goals, or decides to go all in on a larger sports like soccer, boxing will be thrown to the side. And when that happens, boxing will be in the exact same position it's in now, but only worse. It's not uncommon for wealthy elites to be fans of combat sports all around the world. So check out my deep dive on the relationship with Khabib and the Russian oligarch that sponsored him throughout most of his career, and whether their relationship coming to an end had anything to do with Khabib owing millions in taxes to the Russian government.